Hey guys, this is Smithy. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is a very special one. We're going to talk about my 5 brands that I would recommend for the Sephora VIB sale event. These are the 5 brands that I, hands down, would recommend from the high-end category. I would not ask you to waste any dollars on any other brands for that matter. I have a lot of palettes in my collection. I use majority of the indie palettes just because I feel like they give us newness and variety. But for my staple products, I go to these high-end eyeshadow palettes. So I definitely wanted to share with you, especially when Sephora VIB sale is right around the corner. So if you are interested to see which are those top 5 brands, then keep on watching. Okay, the first product I definitely, I'm going to recommend this because I use it so very much. I'm going to recommend Patrick Ta Rose Dimension 2 palette. If you love rosy tones, I feel like I just chose the best, and this is what I would recommend. If you love rosy tones and if you want your eyes to look expensive and you want like an eyeshadow palette for everyday looks as well as for like glam looks, or I don't know, for any occasion, this is just perfect. You can see the wear and tear of this palette. I use these shimmers very nicely, like very finely milled, and the mattes blend by themselves. The creams are absolutely beautiful. You need to set these creams with a powder so that it doesn't crease because it's very emollient, but they blend super nicely, or like blend on top of these powders to give more depth and dimension. But this eyeshadow palette I would highly recommend, especially if you are more of like a rosy tone fan the way I am. You'll definitely see like a pattern going on in the rest of the brands too. Okay, now let's talk about Huda Beauty. I feel like Huda Beauty, when she comes with like big eyeshadow palettes, this is the time to snag it up because I feel like her eyeshadow quality is absolutely breathtaking. I have 2 that I want to recommend. One you cannot even purchase anymore, but this is the other one that I would recommend, the Rose Quartz palette. Love Mercury Retrograde too. If you can find it anywhere, do snag it. And if she brings it back in the Sephora VIB sale, this is such a beautiful palette that gives variety. I cannot even recommend enough. Rose Quartz palette, again, if you're more of a mauve tone person, purpley tone person, this packs a punch. And this might seem light. I am more of a medium to tan skin tone person. All of these shades work beautifully on me. Beautifully. I was very skeptical in the beginning, thinking that this might not show up on my skin. There's not one shade that doesn't show up. I'm so excited. I personally would say, like, out of the entire brands that I'm going to talk about, I feel like I can totally trust Huda Beauty's quality of the eyeshadow. I love her mattes. Her shimmers are extra beautiful and special. The only thing that I do not like from Huda Beauty is this like gel textured shadow. That's the only thing, but otherwise everything else is top-notch quality. So I would highly recommend Huda Beauty for the eyeshadow palettes too. The third brand, it's like an indie brand, but you can definitely find it in Sephora too, is Melt Cosmetics. I would highly recommend these 2 palettes from Melt. They have a bunch of palettes. I know they've come out with like new palettes too, but these 2 definitely are the staples and the ones that I would recommend with amazing quality. The original, if you are into like neutral tones, warm tones, grungy tones, green tones with browns in it, this is an amazing palette to have. They're very pigmented. You need to love mattes and pigmented mattes to love these palettes because Melt does like very pigmented mattes. So you will have no issue with pigments at all. These pans are magnetic, so you can definitely mix and match these palettes too, which I have done quite a few times. I'll show it to you. See, you can just pop it out and mix and match. I always mix and match my Gemini palettes together just because I'm not a big fan of greens. So these grungy deep tones, I generally do switch it out with the rosy tones in the Gemini 2 palette. This is definitely my favorite. Look at this. Again, I won't suggest this as well as Patrick Ta palette because both of them are like pretty similar. That is definitely more a blendable and lighter tone. This is like punchy, but you can definitely go more lighter or rosier, deeper, burgundy, and with those grungy greens too. Again, you need to be a matte person to love this because this is definitely matte heavy, only with 2 shimmers included in it, but all beautiful, beautiful, beautiful quality shimmers as well as mattes. Would highly recommend Melt Cosmetics. The fourth brand that I would recommend, you know this is coming, and this is from Pat McGrath, and I have mine in Bronze Seduction, an original formula. I've seen like a lot of people asking me what palette would I recommend from Pat McGrath. I would say if you're more of a neutral person, this hands down, I use it a lot. Like I love the mattes that are included in this. I love the shimmers as well as the special shade. I feel like these special shades are her best special shades that she has. If you're more of like a pinky rosier person, if you love purples, I would suggest Mothership number 9, which is Heutopian Dream. That has a little bit more like punchiness and like a little bit more coral and purple, everything in it. Or if you are more of a cooler tone person rather than a warm tone person, I would suggest Mothership number 10, which is Moonlit Seduction. I feel like that is also really good. And last, certainly not the least, I would highly recommend Natasha Denona, especially her midi-tone eyeshadow palettes. Okay, one more thing before I go to Natasha Denona. Pat McGrath generally does a lot of her sales in her website. I would highly suggest to go on her website and buy it rather than buying it from Sephora, because Sephora, you know, depending on what tier you are, you can only get 10%, 15%, 20% off. Pat McGrath website would most of the times do like 30% off. So I would highly suggest to wait it out and buy that from the Pat McGrath website rather than to buy it from Sephora. But going on to Natasha Denona, top 3 eyeshadow palettes from Natasha Denona that I would suggest. Retro palette, staple. I love my mauves, I love my pinky tones, and retro is just beautiful. Like I've used this so very much. I actually have one of the shades in my eyes today. This to blend out everywhere, this nude mauve, and I just blended out my edges with it. You'll see this eye look coming very soon. No, actually it might be up before even you see this video. So I'll link it in the eye cards above. The second palette is the newest palette from Natasha Denona. Actually, newest midi from Natasha Denona, and that is I Need a Nude eyeshadow palette. I love this palette for her shimmers. I really love how glossy and wet looking these shimmers are. I love this. I would highly appreciate if Natasha Denona would do like these kind of shimmers, the shade like Muse, in the other palettes that she's coming out with. I liked these glossy wet finish formula, especially for like an everyday office looks. It looks really pretty. I'm happy with this palette. I would highly suggest her to avoid like these formulas. Like this travertine does nothing for me. Absolutely nothing for me. But apart from that, her formula is really nice. I'm not a big fan of these mattes per se, just because when I am more in my tanner zone, these shades all look super gray on me. When I'm not tan, like in the winter season, that's when I can like use this more and show more mauviness to my eyes. That's why. But the shimmers are absolutely good. If you are an insider in Sephora, then you are only getting 10% off. It's rather better to go to Natasha Denona's website. Use my code Smithy Sony to save 15% off, and you can get this. And Natasha Denona like wraps up the palettes really well, so it's really secured too. So with 15% off, I would highly suggest to go to Natasha Denona's website too. But if you are more of a rouge person, then you can get 20% off on Sephora. So I would highly recommend. My favorite palette that Natasha Denona has ever done is My Dream palette. This is definitely my personal favorite, and this is such a beautiful palette. From the cream to powder formula, from the multi-chrome formula, from the mattes to the shimmers, everything is just beautiful. I absolutely love this palette. This is my favorite, like a #1 palette from my collection. I use it a lot. Like I can get my brown tones look, I can get my purpley looks, I can also go fun with that multi-chrome, I can get my rosy tone looks, I can even go like warm tone and orangey. Really versatile palette. This hands down is my favorite out of the bunch. And those are the 5 brands that I wanted to recommend for this Sephora VIB sale. I also have a wish list running for my Sephora sale, and I am eyeing the Danessa Myricks Lightworks 5 as well as the ABH Cosmos palette. Do let me know if you do have those palettes. Which one is your favorite, and would you recommend me to buy it or not, knowing my collection of indie palettes? Should I buy it or not? Do let me know. Help this girl out in the comment section below. But that's all for today, guys. If you did like this video, you know what to do. Do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you're notified every time that I post next. I generally upload 3 videos every single week, every Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.